Hi, my name is Anthony Parrish, and welcome to my presentation of my final project in educational technology. My final project examined humanities MOOC students and the differences that they had versus other MOOC students. So the main question is this: is there a difference between humanities MOOC students, as in massive open online classes, and other MOOC students? Well, we can divide that into three sub-questions. First, what are the demographic differences between humanities MOOC students and other MOOC students? So, are there more males than females? Is there an age difference? Are there differences in where the students are from? Second sub-question is, do humanities MOOC students achieve greater success in their classes compared to different types of MOOC students? And third, how engaged are humanities students in their MOOCs compared to other types of MOOC students? Well, to get this, I took data from the Harvard X MIT X Person Course Academic Year de-identified dataset. The dataset has a long name, but it was pretty helpful because it had student information and performance from a total of 16 different MOOCs from the academic year 2012 to 2013. Every observation in this dataset effectively told the story of one student's activity in one course on the edX platform, and it didn't matter whether that course was from Harvard X or MIT X. And one of the really helpful things about this data was how large it was. It had more than 641,000 observations. So what did this data tell us about the demographics? Well, it told us that the key differences between humanities MOOC students and other types of MOOC students are in their age, their sex, and their country of origin. So for example, the mean age of a humanities student was just under 30 years old, whereas for other types of MOOC students, their mean age was more than 2 years younger. Looking at males and females, humanities MOOC students were much more likely to be female. So you can see in table 1 here, for humanities, 37% of humanities students were female, whereas for non-humanities classes, it was 20% instead. We can also look at geographic location, their country of origin, and see that humanities students are much more likely to be from the United States or from Europe. Now, what about performance? To measure this, I ran some regressions that included not just humanities, but also some interaction effects. And it turned out that the interaction effects were pretty important to have. So I found out that the effect of being a humanities MOOC student depended significantly on whether the student was male or female, how old they were, where they were from, and how much education they've already attained. So, for example, given the interaction effects, the additional effect of being in a humanities MOOC going from a bachelor's to a doctorate is associated with a grade that's more than a point lower, all other factors being constant. So in the end here, we can see that when we have grade as being the dependent variable, being in a humanities class, in a humanities MOOC, is associated with a lower grade, hence lower performance. When we did some robustness checks and asked, okay, well, what if we define performance in a different way? What happens there? So we had a dependent variable as being a dummy variable indicating 1, they finished the class, got certification, 0, they didn't. Well, when we changed the dependent variables and changed the way that we define performance, we got effectively the same results. That being in a humanities class had a negative effect on performance, and in both of those cases, they were very statistically significant, at least in terms of their p-values. Whether or not it was practically significant, that's a different story. But in the end, when it came to performance, there is a negative statistical effect going on here, given our sample data. Now, looking at engagement, as with performance, the effect of being in a humanities class often depends significantly on whether or not the student is male or female, how old they are, where they're from, and how much education they've already attained. But with engagement, we found out something a little bit different than performance. With engagement, the answers are mixed because it depends on how you define engagement. So for example, you can see on the table here, we have our dependent variable as being the number of events. Given the interaction effects, including those, we see that being a humanities MOOC is associated with fewer events, as in they had fewer mouse clicks, they engaged in quizzes less often. Anything that took a mouse click, they did it less often. So by this definition of engagement, being in a humanities MOOC had a negative effect on their class engagement. However, once again, if we get into a robustness check and define class engagement in a different way, and we look at, say, the number of chapters they completed, well, in that case, we get a different result. Being in a humanities MOOC has a positive association with the number of chapters completed. And so with this, we wind up having different conflicting answers, mixed answers in this. So what are our conclusions? Well, humanities MOOC students are more likely to be a little bit older, more likely to be female, they're more likely to be Americans or Europeans. Now the question of, do students in humanities MOOCs perform worse than those in non-humanities MOOCs? Well, based upon our sample data and using a 0.01 level of significance, our study says yes, there is a negative association there, and that association is statistically significant. Now, so the question, are humanities MOOC students less engaged compared to their non-humanities counterparts? Well, based upon our sample data and using a 0.05 level of significance, the study says it depends on how we measure engagement. If we measure engagement by the number of events, there's a negative relationship. If we measure it by the number of chapters completed, there is a somewhat weaker, but still statistically significant positive relationship. So, with this, we can see some avenues for further research. The main one that I'm interested in is, do these results replicate if we take a different data set, preferably something kind of large like the one we had here, and see, do we get these same results? The summer is long. We'll see what happens. But I've really enjoyed this this final project. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and getting to see what I've done. And thank you very much for listening in.